Hey everybody, John here. Welcome back to Catbird Hill. So, the real work, I don't know why I'm calling this real work because I feel like I've been really working on this for about a week and a half now, but the real work of building the foundation has begun, as you can see. So, I'm going to talk a little bit later in the video about why I'm using stone gravel. It's actually 2A modified. 2A, that's what we call in Pennsylvania here, 2A modified. So it's a mix of, probably anywhere from, fines like what we used to be called crusher run, up to maybe inch and a half stone. And you can kind of see it here. It's, it's sort of this mix of, stone and gravel pieces. It's frequently used for driveways because in a relatively short period of time, with just water from rainfall and driving over it, it packs down like concrete. I mean, it becomes just rock solid. So that's what I'm going to be using to set all the posts here for the sawmill shed, the posts for the frame of the shed, as well as the actual base for the sawmill. And we'll get into a little bit of a geology discussion later on in the video about why I'm using stone versus concrete. I know I said before in the previous video that's one of the big controversies of the universe, but I wanted to show you today my method for laying out. I mean, it's the method I've used. I take no credit for inventing this. It's kind of an old school style of layout. It doesn't require any fancy dancy things, tools, or lasers. I'm probably going to rent a laser level just so I can get my level line on the post. We're going to be doing a floating frame on this structure, so I need to get a level line across all the posts because we're on a slope. But this is the method that I have used for years laying out small buildings like sheds and so forth. This is exactly how I laid out our firewood pavilion, which is about 150 yards from here. Basically, what I know, the way I kind of start out with this is I know the distance between the inside walls of the posts here, okay? And I know exactly what that distance is from my plans. So I take a 2x and I mark out that distance, and then on the inside of that mark line on each side, I put just a piece of 1x, set it perfectly using a square, set it 90 degrees, do the same thing at the other end. And then I began with this corner post, got it plumb positioned, as perfectly as I could, attached this on the other side. You saw me just doing that a moment ago at the other end here. Attached it with a few screws here, and basically from that point, putting a level on top of that spacer board to get me the right height. And then once this is set in place with the stone, and it's pretty solid, and it's perfectly plumb, that's my reference point. And then what I'm going to do then is just continue down the row here until we reach, that corner post. I have another spacer board, kind of measure board, just like this, cut exactly the same length because it is the same distance between all these posts here. This to me is a really easy way if it's a one-man operation, which obviously right now it is. So, it kind of takes some of the guesswork out. As long as you build your stick with your 1x material perfectly perpendicular to your set lines, it works really, really well. Now, this part here, setting this first post, is a little fiddly. Took me a little while. It's always deceiving when you're working on a slope. You're eyeballing everything. You never get it right eyeballing it when you're on a slope, so you always rely on your level to get it plumb. But I'm just going to continue this method down there, and then I know exactly the distance from the plans between the inside wall of that post and the inside wall of that post. That's the same distance, obviously, down at this end. And I'll do the same thing. So I'm going to set this back wall first, and then I will, use the measuring guides, the 2x, to set the ends. And then before those get, set in with any kind of stone, I'll take my diagonal measurements, make any adjustments as necessary. But this method has always worked for me. I don't know, I mean, I'm not a construction engineer, but this method has always turned out to be very, very reliable. And like I said, it's kind of a very low-tech method of setting posts. And again, I'm working here by myself, so I wanted something simple, easy. I had the lumber. It cost nothing to build these little jigs here, and the lumber is reusable. I'll disassemble those sticks, and I have 4 pieces of 2x lumber that I can use for something else. So I just wanted to show everybody another quick check and balance that I use for lining up consecutive posts. So what I did is I found the center of the 8x8 post, put a screw in it, ran a string, and then I make sure that string crosses the center line of each of the posts all the way down. And this was the corner post here, the third and final post on the back wall. So what I like to do is just, kind of sight down that line and just look for any deviations at all. And as you can see, it's straight as a string. But it's not laser science here or anything. But again, it gives you a visual. If you get down really low, kind of almost at the level of the string, you can see any deviation. So it's just another little check to make sure that you're not going to have a wavy wall, and then it's going to create a lot of issues when you're trying to even up your diagonal measurements. All right, stay tuned. Well, that's the last one. So we'll get into the discussion of the use of gravel or loose packed stone versus concrete for setting posts. For some reason, you guys look a little crooked right now, and I'm not sure why. There we go. So the short answer is it's both and. The firewood pavilion, which I had mentioned is about 150 yards from here, when I dug those holes with an auger, I got tons and tons of clay. I mean, it was like going through wet brick. I mean, it was just all clay. I'm not a geologist, but I have done taken a lot of courses in soil science and geology for my landscape degrees. But the best way I can explain this is if you're digging post holes and you're encountering a ton of clay, you better use concrete. And the reason for that is if that surrounding soil around that hole is just all clay, if you put a post in there and you fill it with gravel, it's almost like creating an opportunity for water just to rush in, because the gravel has a much lower density. There are more air spaces in between the chunks of gravel and grit than there are in the clay. So if you happen to have water infiltration, it's going to immediately begin to fill that hole where you've put the gravel, because the water won't move through the clay around there. So the easiest way to protect the post and create a nice stable structure is to encase that in concrete, and that's exactly what I did back there. This situation, totally different soil, and that's just how it can be. It's not that far away. But if you recall, when I was digging up this soil was very, very loamy, almost like, let me get a handful of it here. It almost has, like some sand in it, but this is absolutely ideal garden soil. It's nice and loose. It doesn't compact. When it came up, it just kind of fell almost like powder around the outside of the hole. So if you're digging post holes and that's the type of soil that you're excavating from that hole, what that tells you is that the soil surrounding that hole is very porous. It's got more airspace. Water will move through it. Water won't be searching for some place to go that will accept it. So in the case of digging in very loamy, loose, almost sandy soil, you definitely want to use gravel. You actually want water to move through that area just like it does in the surrounding soil. I hope that makes sense, but that's what I have learned over the years. That's what I kind of studied. I am sure, there are people out there that always use concrete, and they may be fine. But for me, this is what has made sense, and that's why, I use each in different situations. So that's my very diplomatic answer for one of the great controversies of the universe, concrete versus stone. So let me show you what I've done. Each of the holes around the post now has been filled with the 2A modified. My method of doing this is I dump in maybe 6-8 inches, and then, as you saw me do there earlier, I'm just tamping it down. I'll use a heavy iron tamper like this. I've got a smaller stick there that I can use to work around the corners, but about every 6 or 8 inches I just go all the way around. I probably tamp it 50 times all the way around, put another load in, tamp it down, and just keep doing that. Now what I've done is I've left it below grade by maybe 2 or 3 inches. We'll just take you over here to this post. So I'm below grade here. What's going to happen now, and again, this is working out very well for me. It often doesn't work out this way. We're going to have about an inch of rain tomorrow, and then we're going to have another ½ an inch of rain in 4 or 5 days. I'm just going to let these posts sit, let that rain, percolate down in there. Like I said, once that happens, it becomes almost like concrete. I'll retamp, and then I'm going to finish it off, and I'm going to actually build a bevel above grade so that surface water can shed over time. So the ultimate test here is to see what our diagonals are, but I wanted to kind of give you an overview. This is sort of where we left off the last time. We just had this guide board in here. We added this one, we added this one at this end, and then one here at the other end. So as I had mentioned earlier, the posts, the rails, the horizontal rails here, the 2x, are pre-measured, lined up, exact measurements to the to the 1/8 of an inch, and I took that right off of my drawings for the foundation. And I just set this back wall first, got that rock solid. I showed you the string line, and then I went ahead and attached the stretchers to the posts while they were loose in the holes at each end. And then basically I just played around until I got the diagonal measurements right, got everything plumb, and started packing it in. So let's just see how we did here. We've got our tape set up at that corner we're going to come down here, the moment of truth. And on this corner here, we have exactly 23 feet and 11 inches. Okay, so come back here, switch the tape to the opposite diagonal. Now what I had to do here, you'll see in a moment, I had to cheat a little bit because this corner post here is almost double the height of the others. And the reason for that, and you'll see later on when we start actually building the frame, the timber that I'm using timber that largely I have. And based on the dimensions I have, the lengths I had to make this post taller than the other ones. That'll become evident when we get to the construction of the frame. So we'll go down here to this diagonal. So what I did is, the cheat here is I took a piece of 8x8 leftover that I cut off, and I just sat it on, you know, the cut end, just so that I can have a more accurate measurement at level. And so there we've got our 23 feet and 11 inches. So we nailed it. Sometimes it works out, huh? So again, you know, this is not, I know this isn't high engineering. And, you know, I told you why I tend to really like this method, because it is just bone simple. It, you know, costs virtually nothing to set this up. How long did it take me to do this? I would say, once the holes were dug, I think I did in one of the videos I showed pouring some gravel into the holes just as the prep. Getting the post set, everything here all set up exactly to this point. If I went through, I think it took me maybe 4 hours to do that. You know, which to me isn't bad when I'm working by myself. You know, nobody's helping me here. I'm filming too, so I'm adding in some time for filming. But I really can't complain about that work output in terms of time. To me, that's actually a pretty good exchange for the simplicity of this. And you know, some people, they might get very frustrated with trying to get the diagonals perfect. My experience has told me that if you get that back wall, those your rear posts, if you get them set just perfect, if you take the time to really get them perfect, basically all you're doing is you're using the rails on the side, the guide rails, almost like they're hinged at those back posts, and you just move them in and out until you get the diagonals exactly the way you want. And I actually kind of like that. It's sort of fun to play around with moving one a little bit, and you know, moving one in, moving one out, and so forth. But the bottom line is it came out really well. Super happy with it. We're going to let some rain come tomorrow, and later on this week we'll further pack in some rock, some gravel to really solidify these things. But these things are just rock solid. I mean, I can't imagine moving these, you know, any kind of a wind force or snow load creating any stress. 36 inches in and packed with stone, so I don't think that's going to go anywhere. That's it for part 3 here, building the foundation. Next video, we're going to come back. We're going to get these holes here. We have 14 holes dug. If you remember from the first video, these are the holes for the 4x4 posts. Got 14 of them, basically two rows. We're going to get them, you know, filled with posts, and we will basically go through exactly the same process. So I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time on that video showing you the post setting details. What I do want to show you is how I'm going to ensure that these posts are in perfectly straight lines and parallel to one another. There's a technique where you can actually use, you know, these boards, these guide boards, to help you with that, and some string. So that's it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. I'm hoping that you guys are finding this helpful. I would love to hear comments on the techniques that I'm using, what your thoughts are, or if you see a technique or you've used a technique that you think is better than this, please leave a comment. I'm always interested in learning how to make things better. Please, if you like the video, give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't, and please share the video around with friends and family who you think might enjoy the content. Until next time, John here from Catbird Hill. Take care.